The sun had barely crested the horizon when the first signs of chaos appeared on our property. Our ranch, sprawling across several dozen acres, had always been a place of quiet routine. Cows grazing in orderly pastures, horses roaming freely, and my family moving through the day with a sense of calm purpose. But that morning, the peace was shattered by the appearance of Karen, our neighborhood's self-proclaimed enforcer of HOA rules, striding across the field in a power suit completely out of place among the mud and hay. Karen had recently joined the HOA board, and from the start, she had made it clear that she saw herself as the ultimate authority on everything from lawn heights to barn maintenance. That day, she arrived with a mission. She had somehow convinced herself that our cows were violating some obscure rule. Rules she seemed to interpret however she pleased, and called the police, demanding the immediate seizure of the animals. From the porch, I watched her stomp through the pasture, clipboard in hand, shouting that our livestock were in violation of regulations. My spouse and I exchanged a glance. "Here we go again," I muttered. Karen had no idea what she was walking into, and we knew this confrontation would be anything but ordinary. While she ranted, I stepped out to greet her. "Good morning, Karen. Can I help you?" I asked, keeping my tone neutral. She launched immediately into her spiel about property codes, HOA mandates, and community standards, insisting that our cows needed to be removed. I raised an eyebrow, then calmly explained, "These cows aren't just part of our ranch. They're part of a program that feeds families in the city projects. Every week, we send milk, cheese, and beef to local families who otherwise wouldn't have access to fresh food." Karen paused, clearly trying to process what she had just heard. "Wait, you're saying these cows feed people in the city?" she asked, incredulous. I nodded. "Exactly. Hundreds of families every month. If you remove the cows, you're not just breaking up our farm, you're cutting off food for people who rely on it." She seemed flustered but undeterred. "Rules are rules," she shouted. "The HOA has authority over livestock." I smiled faintly, knowing the absurdity of the claim but letting her continue for the moment. She pulled out her phone and called the police, hoping they would back her up and enforce her perceived mandate. Within minutes, patrol cars arrived, the flashing lights painting long streaks across the pasture. I greeted the officers with my usual calm demeanor and explained the situation, showing them our documentation, permits for our livestock, proof of our outreach program, and records of weekly donations to the city projects. The officers' initial skepticism melted into understanding as I laid out the facts. Karen, meanwhile, had gone from self-righteous authority to flustered disbelief. Her face turned bright red as she realized that the illegal cows were actually doing more for the community than she could imagine. One officer gently suggested that she rethink her complaint, and another reminded her that calling the police to enforce HOA rules was a misuse of emergency services. By mid-morning, Karen's call had become a cautionary tale. News of the incident spread quickly through the neighborhood, and a few residents even came by to see the cows and hear our side of the story. They were fascinated to learn that the farm had become a lifeline for families in need, and some offered to volunteer for future food distributions. Karen, humiliated and muttering to herself, retreated to her car, her power play having spectacularly backfired. We resumed our daily routines. The cows grazed peacefully, unaware of the drama that had unfolded. My spouse and I loaded trucks with fresh milk for the city, all while neighbors came by to help with donations. The laughter of the children in the projects, later that afternoon when they received the food, was a stark contrast to Karen's earlier shouting. It was a reminder of where true authority lies: in service, not in empty threats. That day became a story repeated in the community for months afterward. The time HOA Karen tried to seize cows, only to discover that those cows were feeding hundreds of families who truly needed them. It was a lesson in humility, in understanding the difference between perceived power and real impact, and in the importance of checking facts before attempting to enforce rules. By the time the sun set, the ranch was quiet once more. The cows grazed, the horses wandered, and Karen's overreach had left her as a cautionary example of what happens when bureaucracy meets reality. Meanwhile, we continued our work, knowing that the real authority on this land and in these families' lives was grounded in compassion, foresight, and the unshakable routines of a farm that had purpose beyond itself.